It's Janae Bauer, and it is September, and it is back to school and back to work for me. This month was really all about discovering the spiritual gifts and rebirthing and manifesting our true work. So as my boys go off to school, and maybe yours too, it's this whole time this month tends to be about how do we kind of get back on track. And so that's where I don't have school supplies in here. However, I have something else that I focused on this month that I'd like to share with you. In here, I have a present. And this is a gift to symbolize a couple of things. This month for me really focused on 3 different areas. Is first of all, being able to discover kind of my birthday in a different way and the spiritual gifts that we have. It is my birthday month. And then also rediscovering the gifts in my life, from my husband to my children to my parents and close friends and family and relatives. And then the third area is really uncovering our true gift, the gift of our true purpose and work that God has given us. So it is a month of gifts and blessings, and my prayer for you is that this month you will discover the greatest gift of all through this love affair with God, and it is right here before your eyes, and it is a gift that is so precious that I'll just ask that you will take the time, just like me, to take some time to unwrap it and get to the heart of what really matters. So let's go ahead and do that. One of the things that was so interesting this month is I learned something that was called a birth verse. You know, many of you, like me, might have a life verse. Mine comes from Colossians, where I talk about where it says, "And in everything he sought as God and worked wholeheartedly, and so he prospered." That one has just always stuck to my heart. And yet I learned I have also something that's called a life verse and a birth verse based on when you are born. So I'm born on September 12th. So this is my birth verse. It comes from Genesis 9:12. "This is the sign of the covenant I'm making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come." So I was pondering, and I still continue to ponder, you know, what does this mean? God's giving us in this verse a sign, and I love signs. I talk about here just some different signs God has spoken into my life, and also the idea of a covenant. I love this, especially as my husband and I have formed this marriage ministry and this covenant of our relationship. And so I just totally believe in covenants and how God has these covenants with He and His people. And if this is my life verse, what might that special covenant be? And for generations to come. You know, our lives aren't just going to matter right now or tomorrow, but for generations. We might not be remembered in the history books, or maybe not even remembered in your own family books. However, everything that we do matters, whether it's a positive or negative in our lives. And so just knowing that for generations to come, who we are right now, who you are right now, God has a special purpose for. And so this birth verse just opened up a new present or a new gift within me, just to think about, you know, how does He pour out His love? And I was having this image of this metaphor of God pouring in like a water pitcher and His love coming in. And yet we have to be open to that and not blocking anything. And yet it's also like, if we're truly whole, that at the bottom of our water pitcher, we could have these little mini holes, similar to when you're watering a plant, that could just sprinkle His love then throughout. So as the love's pouring in, then we can then pour out this love and sprinkle in that love to other people's lives. And then we can be that gift and that blessing, and we can be used fully. And know that at the end of the day, when we go to bed, we can feel that this day mattered. My life matters, and what I did can matter in the lives of people to come. So we're feeling that our lives are being used fully. We're not going to bed, or we're not going to our gravestones thinking that there was still music within us. There was still a dream that was planted in my heart that never came to be. So what was also very interesting for me was just this whole idea of rediscovering the gifts in front of us. Because yes, we have these gifts that are right in front of us that we can oftentimes take for granted. And I don't know about you, but unfortunately, I take my family for granted way too often. And so I was just spending some time reflecting on the gift of my husband, you know, this lifelong partner that God has blessed me with, and how this legacy that we might be able to share not only with our 3 sons, but maybe for our future generations, or maybe in the lives of other married couples as we do some ministries around that. And then also just rediscovering the gifts in the boys. You know, it's interesting, some of the reflections that I was sharing were these great, incredible moments where you just are like, wow, our kids really get it. There's something that is so touching. Like they said just the perfect thing, or they showed their love in the most incredible way. Or on the other hand, I also shared just a couple of just really hard, tough, disappointing moments where, you know what, maybe things didn't go so well, but we have to remember that there's always situations, whether they're good or bad, that can teach us. And we have incredible people in front of us, some who might frustrate us to the ends of the earth, but they can be our greatest teachers, and God has placed them in our lives for a reason. So how can we rediscover these beautiful gifts of our family and use those as ways that then we can grow into who God wants us to be, so that we can then be a gift to other people in our lives? Then the third area or part that I wrote to, and believe me, I could tell I must have been back to school, because man, was I writing here. I wrote a ton and a ton, so I hope that something here will really touch you. But this whole idea of uncovering my true gift and work was just kind of, you know, what if? I'm very creative, if you haven't noticed, and I've created a lot of different books or creations, some that are physically manifested in the present, some that are just only manifested in drafts and writing, and others just spiritually manifested in my head. And yet I was reflecting, you know, what if? What if this is truly what God wants me to share and be? And how then can we utilize this idea of a law of service? You know, there's spiritual and scientific laws out there, these natural laws of the universe that work every time. Just like the law of gravity, what comes up must come down. And I talk about often is the idea of the law of attraction, that what we focus on expands. So if we focus on all the what ifs that could go wrong in our life, we will tend to, through the law of the universe, bring more of that into our lives. And however, if we focus on the what ifs of our possibilities, of all the wonderful things that we could bring into our lives, that also can manifest. And so what could be that true work, that law of service? Because Jesus teaches us through his own words, as well as many of his apostles and disciples have shown us that it is our job to serve and to be of service to one another. And when we choose to be of the greatest service we can is when we can make a huge difference. And during this month, I was acquainted with an author that at the time I hadn't read much about, but I heard of him, Apollo Aquila or Koala or something. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. But he wrote the book, The Alchemist, which is a great book now that I've read it, and many other books. And I was listening to an exclusive interview about him. And he just talked about that, you know, his work is his soul, his work is his purpose, and his work is love meant to be shared. And that is truly our work, and whatever it might look like, is to share our love through our work to others. And what really touched me is that he shared how when he turned 40, and this was right around the time that I was going to be doing the same, is that he knew his true work, his calling. What he talks about in his book, The Alchemist, his personal legend, was calling him since he was a teenager to be a writer. So it was halfway through his life that he quit everything to become a writer and to impact people through his words. Because it's through our words that we create our worlds. And it's through these worlds that we can make a world of difference to others. And that's what he's done through his writing. And I hope in some small way, my writing can make a world of difference to you and to the generations to come that you will bless in your life. And so as we think about this true work and a way of sharing our love, is sometimes we need to either rock the boat, or maybe if you're on a hammock, rock the hammock. And that means sometimes we need to, to step back and to say, hey, you know what? Is what I'm doing still what I should be doing? Is it still serving the greatest purpose? Because we all know that things change. Things can change instantly. And we need to be open to these changes and open to changing what we might need to change so that we can love and support others. And so as we think about this, is that as we're open to kind of rocking the boat and being open to that, then we can be what I share about being love is God made visible. So if God is love and we're sharing our love with others, then love is God made visible. And I just reflect on this, and it's just such a wonderful concept to think about. And this quote, work is love made visible, I've always enjoyed it. And it comes from Khalil Gibran from the philosopher's masterpiece, The Prophet. And so as I was playing on this concept, he shares something that I just think is so beautiful that I wrote that I want to also share with you again. And when you work with love, you bind yourself to yourself and to one another and to God. And what is it to work with love? Is it to weave the cloth with the threads drawn from your heart, even if your beloved were to wear the cloth? Is it to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved, were to dwell in that house? Is it to sow seeds with tenderness and to reap the harvest with joy, even as if your beloved were to eat the fruit? And I just thought that was so beautiful that we can join with our beloved, with our God in our hearts, and to know that it is in our hearts and through our hearts that we touch others. There's a reflection I share that was just such a great reminder every time I look at that, is it's through our hearts. There's a quote from The Secret Things of God that says, your heart is a garden that needs constant weeding. So we think of our gardens, right, that we're always weeding, and believe me, I wish I could weed it once and these weeds would be gone, but unfortunately, they keep creeping up. And so it is with our hearts. You know, our hearts are wonderful to cultivate, and our lives should be a cultivation and a culmination of those wonderful moments and those seeds that God has planted in our hearts. Yet, unfortunately, it is also through our heart where the weeds, where the sin, where the parts of us that we don't like can also grow. And we have to figure out ways that we can pick those weeds, that we can tender and nurture the garden within that God has planted in our hearts, and get rid of those weeds, those lies, the negative thoughts, whatever it is that might be getting in the way. And so this is the whole idea that I share, just different reflections of how you can, not only look good like a beautiful garden on the outside, but but also be good on the inside, because it is much easier, we all know, to say things and to look things than it is to actually be things. And so we want to be able to share the fruits of our labor. We want to be able to walk in love side by side with God. And that's what really this whole love affair with God is. And it was just so beautiful for me for this month, my birthday month, the month of rediscovering these wonderful gifts in my life and uncovering this beautiful gift that God has planted, to have this love affair, to know that we can make a tremendous difference if only we choose to love God with our whole hearts. And once we do, we can then share that love, that pure joy, that love, and be a garden and be a bright, wonderful blessing to others. So from my heart to yours, be love.